Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today's video is going to be a little different. Today's video is going to be talking about the current state of Affliction Warlock going into patch 11.1 and just sort of what we need to do to, I think, save Affliction Warlock. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, and I was hoping there'd be some changes in patch 11.1 to maybe help with quality of life or just like, you know, subpar combat interactions and things, but there really hasn't been a whole lot, whether it's due to time constraints or whatever, I'm not really sure. But I want to hit on this in this video. I want to make this video and just say what I feel needs to happen. The spec. I don't work with Blizzard. They are way more skilled than I am when it comes to developing this class and making this game. And this is not going to be a video bashing Blizzard. That's what you're looking for. Sorry, not the way I give feedback and stuff. I want it to be a constructive, a critically constructive video because I'm passionate about Warlock and Affliction, and I want to play Affliction in progression again. And while I can technically play it, it hasn't really been played in a very long time for a handful of reasons. And honestly, playing it during raid testing in patch 11.1, it feels dated. And I want to touch on that today. Talents, just combat, everything about I think that could change, and just go from there. If you guys want any week rewards, add-ons, links up here, all that kind of stuff. Also, heads up really quick, the 11.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet is indeed live on Patreon if you guys would like early access to that. It goes over raid stuff, Mythic Plus stuff, gearing, talents, all that from PTR, everything. If you want early access to it, the Tier 3 Felguard rank or higher gets it, but at the same time, it goes public before the patch comes out and all that stuff. So let's just jump right on into it. Now, I actually had to go pretty far back to find this stuff. This is actually an old, I think, normal clear of Castle Nathria on my YouTube channel. I don't even have the footage anymore. My old UI is here. It's still the same, still pretty crappy. But point being, thinking back to the last few raids, man, even the last few expansions, the last real raid here that Affliction Warlock was, I guess you could say, like, good in, was likely Castle Nathria, which is heralded as one of the best raids of all time. At least, probably top 5 for most everybody, right? You played Affliction on a handful of fights, Shriekwing, Huntsman Altimore, Dark Vein, SLG, even the Nathria. The progression spec on Mythic was Affliction, Sludge Fist as well. You saw a mix of Demo and Destro on certain fights also, depending what you were doing, and there was some variety that you could have, but Affliction was, for the most part, heralded as the best spec in Castle Nathria for Warlock. But moving on from there, looking at fights like, or looking at raid tiers like Sanctum Domination, there wasn't a whole lot of AF play. A couple fights here and there, like Kel'Thuzad at certain points, but wasn't even that good compared to Destro, and it just sort of began to fall off. I mean, you're looking at Destro and looking at Demonology. They are good at very specific things, but universally, they're also just pretty strong in general. Whatever is the best in single target, you'll play in Patchwork, right? But Demonology has a very, very strong, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, a very, very strong stacked single target damage profile, right? If you have a fight like, Gnarl Root in Amir Dissil, right? Single target, add stacked on top. Demonology, even just passively, is very, very good at that. You're casting Implosions, Dreadtalker, Demonic Strength, things that just cleave in general on top of these adds, while also just blasting the boss down. If you're looking at like a council-based fight or a two-target boss kind of fight, or a fight where ads are spawning in, Destro, also very strong. Havoc Cleave, very, very strong. Hasn't been as strong over the course of like Dragonflight into this part of Warthin, but 11.1, they buffed the duration of Havoc again, they buffed a handful of abilities, Shadowburn's good. Destro is our most mobile spec at this point due to Shadowburn being a spell you can cast on the move with a pretty short cooldown that actually does damage. AF for a long time has been known for its mobility with Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, which you could refresh in the move. Corruption's permanent now for the most part. You can refresh Agony. Siphon Life is gone. It's a passive trait now. But for the most part, that damage, it's mobile, but is it really relevant damage is the question. I digress regardless, though. A lot of the fights have not really fit Affliction that well. And even if they have, the tuning of AF and the quality of life of Affliction just has sort of been off, right? Even looking at SLG and Castle Nathria when we were playing it, with Vile Taint and Soul Rot, I can find it here somewhere, maybe towards the end. It ended up being just a bit of a headache to play it due to how clunky it was. I don't think it's even in this video, but the Soul Rot and Vile Taint, Seed of Corruption cast, all that into like the ramping of it, trying to kill the ads where they blow up to other people just having random melee cleave or cleave in general. It's a different playstyle from what we've seen when we had Unstable Affliction AF at your spender, right? Now, Rapture solved a lot of problems that Unstable Affliction AF had, right? You had a lot of ramp-up time with Unstable Affliction AF. You had to spread multiple UAs on multiple targets for Contagion, or you put multiple UAs on a target, which took a while to ramp up, then you launch a big Death Bolt. and a bit of burst would come in. Deathbolt nerfed a lot of times over the course of BFA due to that interaction. Then Rapture came along in Shadowlands, which sort of solved the ramp up issues in a sense. You get your dots up a bit longer than most classes to get like going. Once you did 5-6 Raptures dumping damage, you would climb those meters, and that helped sort of alleviate the issue of, oh, well, you know, AF can't really burst anymore. But there were still other issues that are unfortunately still present. Looking through previous tiers, even in Dragonflight and Vault the Incarnates, really didn't see a whole lot of AF play. Maybe a little bit on the Storm boss towards the end, a bit more in farm, looking at things like, what was that second raid in there? Aberrus saw no play whatsoever. Tuning was a bit off. And once again, a lot of stat cleave fights which favor Demonology, or spread cleave fights where, you know, Destro, Havoc, which is straight up better. Looking at Amirdasil, the exact same thing. We played Affliction a little bit on the big green lady, Nimu, the cow boss, right? The big green lady in the wall. You played it there a little bit, but for the most part, once again, Affliction's profile just fell short. On Naimu, once again, you wanted that priority target swapping when the ad spawned on the side, but you really didn't have it. An ad spawns, running across the room, putting up your Agony, your Corruption, your Siphon Life, your Unstable Affliction, your Haunt, your Singularity, your Soul Rot, stacking Shadow's Embrace, hitting Dark Lair. They're all getting blown up by Destro Locks or other classes in general. They don't take 10 seconds to set up damage, right? And the further we've gone into Warwithin and things, looking at the first tier, being Narrower Palace, AF did see play on Silken Court. A phenomenal Affliction fight. Council fight, very good, a lot of seed burst, got a lot of Soul Harvester value early on, but even like in recent times, we've seen a rise to Destro being played in that fight, and it's likely just a better spec at this point, right? You know, a bit of Demonology play in the raid as well, obviously, not a whole lot, mostly a Destro tier, but regardless, Affliction suffers, I think, a good bit from a lack of quality of life. Now, raiding, probably a bit more of just like a awkward tuning compared to Destro and Demo, and a bit of awkward damage profiles. Once again, ramp up time being an issue, but I think a lot of it also, when it comes to M+ and things, just stems from a lack of quality of life. You're maintaining Haunt and Shadow's Embrace and Agony, and Siphon Life and Corruption, 3 of the dots in the past, while having a lack of priority target swapping. You know, until we had Soul Swap, which wasn't even that great in the first place, albeit now we have AC, Siphon Life is gone, but you still suffer from that very similar issue of we can't prior target swap. You've got Shadow's Embrace to juggle, you've got UA, which you're juggling on different targets if they're spawning, you're maintaining Haunt, which is not the end of the world, but versus playing Destro or Demo, which have good profiles basically everywhere, and throwing up an Immolate and casting Chaos Bolts, throwing some demons out and Tyranting every minute. It feels very awkward with modern day combat in WoW. Now, when it comes to Affliction and modern day combat, whether it's Mythic Plus or single target based, it just feels to me, and I thought about this for a while, it just feels like the actual combat and overall quality of life of Affliction Warlock is just dated. It feels like I'm sort of playing a spec that was around in like Burning Crusade or Wrath or Cataclysm in modern day Warcraft. And with how combat's been evolving, M+ is becoming more and more like just what's the word I'm looking for? Demanding. Raid fights are becoming more and more hectic. They demand those priority target swap, burst damage profiles. Affliction Warlock just can't compete in a lot of these settings, I feel like. Even looking at, for example, how Destruction goes into a trash pack in M+. You're going into a trash pack, great. I go Cataclysm, Infernal, Pop Malevolence, CDF, Rain of Fire. I'm at 3.4 million, 5 million DPS here, give or take, within 6 seconds, right? That's not even including potting or popping trinkets. If you're looking at Demonology, for example, in AoE, you can carry a large pack of imps from one pack to the next, literally going to the next pack, precast a Vile Fiend, cast Dreadstalker's Tyrant, and rip an insane amount of damage. Stat cleave damage from your dogs, from Demonic Strength, from Bombers, from just general cleave, from Dreadbite. If you want to implode from mass AoE, you can. Your Tyrant also is cranking, doing a bunch of damage in single target with Diabolist, due to like decon and damage amps there. Affliction just can't do that. You can't carry dots from one pack to the next. Even if you carry like a Vile Tank and a Soul Rot, you're still sitting there having to cast multiple spells to get things rolling. On top of all that, Seed of Corruption costs a shard. Vile Tank costs a shard. Affliction shard economy is not the best. When it comes to Destro and Demo, those things cost shards, but Demo generates shards so fast by casting Shadow Bolts, by casting Demonic Cores, Demon Bolts. Destro, whenever Immolate or Wither ticks, you get shards. You're swimming in shards as Destro. Affliction can't really do that. Now, say you're great at shard sniping when a pack dies, you go to a new pack with 5 shards. Great. Awesome. Let's say, for example, we're heading into a pack here. I'll try and change to a spec that plays Vile Tank here if I even have one. on PTR. I don't even know if I do here, but we can make it work. If you're playing Vile Taint heading into a pack, you know basically you're going to have, how do I close this, man? Good lord. You're going to have basically just 2 shards ready to go. This is fine. Doesn't even matter. This talent's okay, perfect. This build's good. You're going to have like 2 shards. One for a Seed of Corruption cast, one for a Vile Taint cast, and you're scrambling to get into combat. When that tank's pulling that pack, you're scrambling to cast your Seed, cast your Vile Taint, cast your UA, your Haunt, your Soul Rot, your Darkleg, your Malevolence, and then 5 Raptures. Destro's going in, Cata, CDF, Infernal, Rain of Fire, you're cranking. Demo's going precast Vile Fiend, Dogs, Tyrant, you're cranking. You have 10 seconds of ramp as Affliction. And when it comes to the Vile Taint thing with refreshing Agonies before it falls and it can be refreshed with Vile Taint, that's a whole debate in itself. Heading into a pack, for example, if the tank's running in, I'm scrambling to cast my Seed. Cost a shard. Going into a Vile Taint. Cost a shard. Going into a UA. Going into a Haunt. Going into a Soul Rot. Going into a Dark Glare. Going into a Malevolence. And at this point, yeah, I can begin blasting certain things down, right? And yeah, your burst is good. Fine. Destro has that longer rampy kind of burst with Rain of Fire, Malevolence damage, all that coming in. Demo obviously has strong stack single target and all that. But then once this is all over, if you don't have a Dark Lair or whatever, you face the problem of your Vile Taints falling, or your Agonies falling here. I can barely catch them with Vile Taint here because I had both Dark Lair extending my Agonies, and I had Soul Rot with Malign Omen, increasing the duration of my Agonies whenever I Rapture. But quite often, most of the time, you're not going to have both those. You won't even have barely one. You won't even have one if you have no Soul Rot for every pack or Dark Lair, which means whenever you cast a Vile Taint, for example, on a pack to apply Agonies, up to 8 targets, you're going to have this awkward time where your Agonies begin to fall. For example, we can do it right here. Let's say we're heading into a pack, and then plus my 4 shards. I'm going to go, precast Seed of Corruption, into a Vile Taint, into a UA, into a Haunt, into a Soul Rot, and I'll Rapture a bit here and watch the Agony duration, 14, 17. It extends whenever I Rapture. The first 3 Raptures because of Malign Omen. Gives you a dot extension, which is a very nice quality of life. But look at my Vile Taint, 15 seconds. Look at my Agonies, 7, 6. So I have to go in and manually refresh Agony. 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 Catch UA. Catch my Haunt. If you got a 5th target, Agony again. Oh, look, I have Vile Taint in 2 seconds. And that's just like really poor quality of life. When you're also juggling multiple dots, a Haunt, a Shadow's Embrace at times, priority targets, having to factor in other niche parts of the spec, like draining your main target for TC procs. The quality of life is just not there for dot maintenance, for Affliction and Plus. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Vile Taint being altered to be in a form where you can have it refresh Agony in AoE, but it hasn't really happened. Blizzard made attempts to sort of alleviate this issue. There's a talent in early alpha that whenever you had Agony on a target like this, if you cast it again on that same target, it would spread to a different target, I believe, which I would assume was an attempt to make, Agony maintenance AoE easier without reducing Vile Taint's cooldown or changing other things. That's okay, right? It's good to see them acknowledging it. It was removed, didn't really work out very well, but it's sort of like an acknowledgement of, yeah, this might be an issue. Now, I don't really know as to why the Vile Taint thing hasn't really been addressed over the course of an expansion and a half, but the quality of life with Affliction and Plus is just non-existent. Shadow Priest, once again, apples to oranges, has Shadow Crash, which applies Vampiric Touch and Shadow and Pain, I think, to 8 targets. I think it's a 20-second cooldown, give or take. Doesn't cost shards, right? Once again, every class is designed differently, but the quality of life for Affliction compared to Destro or Demo is just, it's 2 different things. It's like playing, a modern day class and WoW with combat versus playing a class from Burning Crusade, right? The quality of life is just not there. On top of that, you have things like Crescendo, which was changed in War Within, where previously, if you were in a pack, Crescendo says, whenever you have Agony, Wither, and UA active, if you cast a Drain Soul, you have a 20% chance or 30% chance, if it's a Shadow Bolt, whatever it is, to basically get a free Rapture cast, right? Now, the way this used to work was whenever you were in M+ or whatever, I have a weak aura, or a plater like script that puts a border around my UA target here. You'd open up here, do whatever, do your stuff, put up your UA and your Haunt, and your Soul Rot, and your 10 different spells, and eventually you'll be able to cast things, right? If you were to Drain Soul any of these targets here, right, any of these, whether it had the UA on it or not, there was a chance to get a TC proc, which is a free Rapture. It doesn't work that way anymore. It was changed, I think, mid-beta, where you have to drain one target specifically, one that has your UA, Agony, and Wither on it. And doing that then gives you a chance to get a TC proc, which I got right there. You can't drain any other target. When you're in a pool of 7, 8, 9 mobs, and you're staring to the ceiling looking for your kick and everything else, and 10 dots are rolling, I can't find my UA target in there. I need a script and a weak aura and a mod to juggle all this to find that, right? So quality of life for TC is just almost non-existent as well in M+. Obviously, like the Vile Taint Infirmity thing, when it comes to that, I mean, Infirmity, like, I get the idea behind adding 4 stacks to Vile Taint, Agonist, whatever, but unfortunately, this is never really taken anywhere, and 4 stacks is not incredibly relevant when it comes to M+ or single target or whatever. I think a great solution to this was brought up by Arson as well a long time ago, you could just literally make Infirmity say, if you apply Agony via Vile Taint, the duration is just doubled. Or you make Vile Taint's cooldown 20 seconds and make it say, hey, Agony's 25 when you cast it through Vile Taint. I think it's an okay trade-off because Vile Taint still costs a shard, but at the same time, if you want that quality of life, you're paying the toll or paying the cost of 1 extra talent point here. So I got to find somewhere in this build, which is not an M+ build, to pull and put in Infirmity for that quality of life. That's more than fine. It's like paying the toll, but I will gladly pay for that quality of life, right? On top of that, you have things like Shadow's Embrace and M+, which, I mean, it's super hard to optimize around, but it is essentially, you know, a % damage increase, which you want to spread, if you can, within reason, on council fights or M+, if you have like 2 or 3 targets, spread your Shadow's Embrace around by casting Drain Soul on different targets. But unfortunately, that's a non-bow with Crescendo, because you have to drain your main target that has Unstable Affliction on that. So between that and the Vile Taint thing and draining your UA target and Shadow's Embrace, it just feels really anti-synergistic and a bit dated when it comes to modern day WoW combat. I think you could just straight up replace Shadow's Embrace with Contagion, which used to be an ability that made your UA target take 10% more damage from you, which is basically the same thing. It would remove the clunkiness of juggling both Haunt and Shadow's Embrace via Drain Soul and stuff, and just say, hey, whatever you have UA on takes 10% more damage from you. Work well with your tier bonus in 11.1. Be pretty cool. I think at the same time, honestly, with Sow the Seeds being removed, which used to be like our main filler, or like, I guess damage-wise in Dragonflight and before then, you could probably remove the Soul Shard cost from Seed of Corruption. Because all you use Seed for at this point is just apply Corruption or Wither in AoE. You cast it 1 time. That's literally it. Now, you might run into an issue. You likely would, maybe, of whenever you run out of shards for Raptures, you'd rather just cast Seed instead. So maybe you put a clause on it where it does very little damage, but applies Wither or Corruption, so it's still relevant when it comes to like applying the dot, but you want to cast Drain Soul or other things outside of that instead. You can probably make that work, but having the 2 shard cost of Seed into Vile Taint in your opener for basically every trash pack of relevance and plus feels bad. And there are times where you don't even have Soul Rot and trash packs and plus. You have a Vile Taint, you're doing less than the tank in damage, right? Other classes like Destro have Kata every 30, CDF every 20, Malevolence every minute, and that's way more damage, way better quality of life, and it just feels better. That's not even factoring in target swapping, right? We don't really have a way to swap targets very well. Let's say, for example, we're in, you know, a raid setting, right? We're over here attacking a boss in a single target. Say we're playing Singularity, doing whatever. We got all our dots up here, doing whatever. We're pumping, you know, doing our thing, right? It's going to be an ad spawning. All right, so let's swap to that ad. Agony. Wither. UA. Drain Soul. Stacking Shadow's Embrace. Haunt. Vile Taint. Soul Rot. Like, dude, like, I could have gone to the store and gotten food and come back home at this point already, man. Like, there's no target swapping. It's incredibly hard to prior target swap as Affliction. Now, Soul Swap was around in Dragonflight. It wasn't the best version of it. I think it cost a shard and copy like half your spells. It didn't copy PS or Soul Rot. I think you could give us back like legitimate Soul Rot or Soul Swap like we had back in the day, where it copied whatever you had. You could inhale dots and exhale dots. We need some kind of like prior target swapping when it comes to modern day combat. Wow, no class that does this, unless you're incredibly overtuned, it's going to be played in any kind of relevant setting where you have prior targets and swapping. This is so slow. It's glacially slow, right? Factoring that into like raid settings or M+ alike, it just doesn't really feel like it's modern combat in Warcraft, you know? I think this is a good version of Rapture Aff. This is probably the best version of Rapture Aff we have. And I think, for the most part, they've done a really good job at like shifting around a bit more of AF to be as dot base as possible with Wither and Hellcaller. Hellcaller feels great. Soul Harvester shard generation through this feels phenomenal. Like, I wish this shard gen was in the clash tree here. I'd love to take Shadow of Death, which gives you 3 shards whenever you cast Soul Rot, and swap this with Malign Omen, or more or less Dark Harvest. Like, swap these two, Dark Harvest with this, would feel phenomenal. Because AF shard generation feels clunky. It's not incredibly controllable in M+, unless you're playing Soul Harvester. You rely on, like, Pax dying and shard sniping, and, like, you have to move your UA around when Pax die to get a shard whenever a mob dies from UA. It just feels dated. And there's a good version of Rapture AF here. I think we're actually really close to it. And a couple like quality life tweaks, the TC stuff, the Seed Corruption stuff, the Vitaltain, Agony, permanent maintenance and AoE thing, all that, if that's fixed, I think AF would crank. And it'd be so much fun. But unfortunately, when I play AF and Plus, or even Raiding, when I play it compared to Destro or Demo, it just feels like I'm playing an older expansion. And I'm just hindering my damage and all that. If AF is overtuned, or the best spec in single target, you'll play it. But even the profiles from this upcoming raid, when it comes to, spoilers, 11.1 PTR, this is a very, very, very good Hellcaller raid. If you watch any of my testing, Hellcaller is exceptionally strong. Wither is very, very good. I mean, this is a Hellcaller fight. Hellcaller fight. Hellcaller fight. Hellcaller fight. Single target fight. Great Hellcaller fight. Mugsy's likely a Hellcaller fight. And Galley Wix with all the ads is probably a Hellcaller fight here as well. But unfortunately, Destruction is the better Hellcaller spec. Destruction is the better dot spec because of Wither and Black and Soul and Malevolence and how it works with Destro compared to AF. And when Destro is, you know, the better dot spec for Warlock, there's definitely a problem. I mean, when it comes to things like Vexy, which is the first boss in the raid, where you have these ads spawning in across the room right here, I can play Hellcaller on this fight. I'm going to. But am I going to play Destro in a setting, or am I going to play AF? When these can all come over here, I can precast Cataclysm to spread 2 Withers right here, Wither over here, pop Malevolence, they're all flaring up and do big damage. And Destro can just pop Havoc if you're playing it, have Mayhem proc, and you're blasting everything down. It's good cleave, and it's not even because Destro is too strong, it's because the damage profile is just good here. It's fine. It's suitable for this encounter. It's the better Hellcaller spec. Moving on to the next fight, Cauldron of Carnage. This is the one fight where AF might actually be better than Destro this tier because of how hard it is to multi-dot on this fight. You can put a Wither on one boss, run to the other side, patchwork the other boss down, and just say, hey, Wither's over here doing damage to this boss. It's permanent with Affliction. But even with that being the case, Destro Hellcaller has been very, very strong here. And the quality of life with Destro on this fight, barring Wither being permanent for AF, is just better. You run over one time every half a minute to have an ad, come back, cleave it down. Otherwise, you're trying to juggle Agonies and the other boss. It's running in. You don't want it to fall because it's ramping up. Destro, you hit Havoc. You cleave. Put up your Wither, hit Malevolence. You're cranking. Other bosses like Rick Reverb, for example, as well. When you have ads spawning around parts of the room like this, I can precast Kata. There's Wither. Pop Malevolence. Havoc. Blasting everything down. AF casting spell 3 of 10 in its ramp here. And look, they're basically halfway dead now, right? You know, the profile, and you can't prior target swap here these either. There's no soul swap around. There's something available here to really swap as AF. You'd be casting a Vitaltain into manual Withers because you can't really pop Seed. Seed's radius is super small. It won't hit what Kata hits. It's just not suited for the modern day combat this raid has, or what we're seeing in a lot of M+ settings. Sticks, to a similar extent, also could be a good AF fight. It's a good Hellcaller fight. A lot of ads spawn in here. They're running around with random trash packs and stuff. But, like, in the end, you want the Havoc Hellcaller cleave on this fight that Destro can bring on these larger bombs, these bombshells here. You want to burst these bombshells down right here. When they reach 70%, the bigger bombs that are rolling around, the AD clear these, can roll through them. AF doesn't have that snap burst damage that Destro has here. You can turn with Destro, go Wither, Malevolence, Havoc cleave, bolt down, shield's broken. AF's casting 1 of 85 dots doesn't do anything, right? It's just too slow for modern day fight design in combat. There's no prior target swapping. You just really can't do it. Sprocketmonger, single target, play whatever it is. One-Arm Bandit is a prime example of why Destro is the better Hellcaller spec and just the better dot cleave spec right now, right? And it's not overtuned. It's just Destro is built for fights like this. When you have this spread multi-target cleave where you can't Vitaltain these ads, you have to dot them manually or whatever, Destro can just go, hey, they're spawning in, Wither, Infernal, Malevolence, Havoc, melt the world. AF is still casting its third Agony here. Then you gotta go Soul Rot. Then you gotta go PS on your main target here. Then you gotta go Dark Glare. Then you gotta go Malevolence here. And you can funnel some damage into the boss. These ads are already dead at that point, though. They're already halfway dead. Destro can just melt the world right here, right? Now, I will say Destro and Demo's profiles are very, very strong in rating. They've been for a long time. But once again, there's no prior target swapping here. There's no way to go like, hey, I want to apply Agony and Corruption or Agony Wither to that mob right there. With things like Shadow Crash or even Shadow Priest as a talent that's whenever you cast Vampiric Touch, it applies Shadow Word Pain. Doesn't work that way with AF. You got to go Agony. Like literally, when these things spawn in, I'm going to tab target here. And I'm going to go Agony, Wither, Agony, Wither, Agony, Wither, Singularity, Soul Rot, Refresh Haunt, Dark Glare, Malevolence. They're already dead. They're already dead. Now, if AF is over-tuned or tuned in a way where it's just really, really strong, you can make it work in these settings. But the damage profile that it brings with, compared to Destro Havoc Cleave or Demo Stat Cleave, it's just not competitive. It's just not. It needs fundamental changes. And I once again, to clarify before this video ends here, I don't want it to seem like I'm saying, oh, Blizzard's done a bad job with this and bash Blizzard. It's not. I'm not saying that. That's not the way I give feedback. I think this is a good version of Rapture AF. I do. But there are some quality of life issues, but thankfully they can be addressed, I think, with relative ease. And if and when they are, you've got a really good structure of a really good version of Rapture AF. Hellcaller feels phenomenal. The hero talents for Warlock feel really good, I think. Destro feels great. Demo feels good. AF is close to feeling good, but unfortunately it's had these issues for a long time. They haven't really been addressed, and it's gotten to the point where I want to play AF so bad, but I can't. And like, I want to hit on talents very briefly as well, because I think that there actually are a lot of really cool talents in the tree. I mean, even just things like Malediction and Contagion, okay, improved Haunt functionality, which was just one talent here overall, but there are some pretty cool, like, iconic throwback-esque talents. I think Cold Leak is very cool, Sacrilege is very sick, even Malevolent Visionary is actually pretty good. But a lot of issues, I think, in AF tree sort of lie in this general section, and some up here, these being 2.0 nodes and all that, but I digress. I think the biggest issues with AF tree, some pathing issues in here with like Contagion, Malediction costing 2 points, Improved Haunt costing 1, but a lot of like capstone or sub-capstone talents just really aren't very good, right? Things like Xavius' Gambit, Affliction, or UA could use a significant buff in general, even just based on UA, which would, I guess, inadvertently buff Xavius' Gambit, but you could buff both UA and Xavius' Gambit. I mean, Agony does more damage in single target compared to UA, and when UA is limited to one target, I mean, it should certainly be doing more damage in Agony, I think, at least in my opinion. Oblivion, costing 2 shards, being a 45-second cooldown. Just the damage output it does is not very strong. It'd be really cool to have this ability, maybe like whenever you channel it, have your dots tick twice as fast on your target. Maybe have it increase their duration a bit. Something that happens when you channel the ability for a bit of quality of life, maybe just functionality. Something along those lines would be really cool. Perpetual instability. Cast time of UA reduction, it doesn't matter. It's already 1.2 seconds for me. I believe with hasted effects, this is below the GCD. Doesn't even matter, right? And the damage part of it is just not really good. A great like alternative here would be just cascading Calamity from BFA, where if you clip UA when you refresh it, you get a haste buff. You just maintain once every 15-ish seconds, which you're doing anyway. It's just based around, you know, UA and Pandemic, right? I mean, Dark Harvest is a fine talent, but you play this in single target because the other talents, whether it's Unstability or Death's Embrace or Xavius' Gambit or Relinquished or even Ravenous Afflictions for Hellcaller, are just not as good, right? You play a essentially cleave talent in single target due to like these not being as strong. Now, Relinquished, honestly, Affliction Shard Generation, I would like a bit less randomness. Hellcaller has, I mean, a bit less orange or shard gen if you factor in, you know, Soul Harvester's actual Shadow of Death generation, but just feels like a lot of the talents here, Gambit, Oblivion, even Death's Embrace to a certain extent, Unstability, Relinquished, even things like Improved Malefic Rapture, the cast time reduction here almost puts me below the GCD. It's 1.1 second now. With more haste, I'm below it, right? Things like Phantom Singularity and Infirmity. Phantom Singularity's duration is reduced directly by the amount of haste you have, which sounds good, right? Shorter Singularity, but unfortunately, that is not as good as it used to be in like BFA and things because of Rapture. You want your dots to be active essentially longer, so if I Rapture, you know, later into a Singularity window without, you know, the haste reduction, it's still active. To a similar extent, making Singularity's duration shorter with the higher amount of haste you have, is directly a non-bow, like a non-combo with Infirmity, because enemies take 10% more damage when Singularity is active. So you have a non-combo here as well that needs to be addressed, and that's what I'm referring to when I say a lot of it's just sort of like, it doesn't really mesh like Destro and Demo do. It's like Destro, Demo, AF, right? Like, there's a really good structure of AF here, but a lot of things need to be tweaked and tuned to make this spec functional the way it needs to be in modern combat. Don't get me wrong, this tier is also just a pretty good Destro tier, it looks like, but even if that wasn't the case, I'd still be saying the same thing. Oh, I also think it's very important to mention briefly that Affliction's tier set in patch 11.1 is not very good when it comes to the 4-piece and the UAs and stuff, but I also want to drive home that they haven't really buffed much yet. What is my hair doing? They're still tuning things. I think it should be done similar to how Demonology was in S3 of Dragonflight, where it did, I think it's how Demo's tier bonus worked. It did more in single target, and if it spread to multiple targets, or if it like splashed like Doom branded, it did less. For example, maybe instead of 50%, if you only have one target active, it does like 200% increase to UA, or 150, whatever the modifier is you need. And if it's on like 2 targets, maybe it does like, 150. If it's on 3 targets, it does 100. If you have 4 UAs active, then it does 50% damage increase. That needs to very likely happen because the most 4-piece with like the multiple UAs and increasing UA damage is actually just really subpar damage wise. When mobs die, you do get shards from the UAs and spread. It's very buggy right now, so I can't actually show it like in gameplay on these dummies and things here, but I can tell you the damage of the 4-piece is exceptionally subpar, but I think it'll be buffed. If it's, it should be buffed. Thanks for watching, guys. Wraps it up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and hopefully hit on some important things, I guess things y'all feel are important for Affliction Warlock change-wise heading into, I guess, 11.1, 11.2, and just beyond. Like I said, I don't want this video to be seen in like a way of me bashing Blizzard. It's not. That's not how I do things, how I get feedback. I think it's very important to be constructively critical of things when they need to be. I think AF's in a spot. At this point, it's been long enough where it's where it need to be. In some ways, it's really good. I think this is the best version of Rapture AF we've ever seen, but there's still a lot of quality life issues that need to be addressed, and unfortunately, it just feels dated compared to modern combat in WoW. So, just my opinion, but either way, hopefully y'all enjoyed it. If you guys have any weak auras, add-ons, and profiles, links to Twitch, Discord, and all that up here. Post down below in the description. And like always, a huge shout out to my patrons for all support on Patreon, y'all. Thank you a million times. I greatly appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, also a link up here, there, I think, as well as down below. And heads up, the 11.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet is indeed live on Patreon for the tier 3 Fellow Guard rank or higher, if you'd like early access to that, but it goes public regardless before the actual patch comes out. I think it might be a little late in PTR, like 11.1, for these changes to be implemented. Maybe not, probably though, but either way, I want to get this out there and just my thoughts, everything off my chest. My hands are clean in this, and I want AF to be good again, man. Like, if it's overtuned, you'll play it. But man, it feels 3 times as convoluted as playing Destro or Demo in basically any setting. And I want to enjoy playing AF again. And this is my plea. So, thanks for watching, y'all. I'll catch y'all again soon on stream. Peace.